And now, broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Just when you thought it might be safe to go back into the water, the sharks are out. And by sharks, I'm referring to Washington, D.C., the Republicans. They're not an elephant. That's not their mascot. It's the shark. Because they're coming for you. Paul Ryan, who you had all kinds of people endorsing as a conservative, he just betrayed America. $1.1 trillion 2,000-plus page omnibus bill that fundamentally transforms America. He funds Obama's fundamental transformation. So if you were wondering whether or not the Republicans were going to stand up for you, you gave them the majority. You gave them the House a while ago. You gave them the Senate. And they just stabbed you in the back. This thing is unbelievable. It is such a massive, monolithic giveaway. It is a tremendous. There aren't words to describe what a gargantuan waste of money this budget is. I mean, let me give you one little. I just want to give you just one of the crumbs off the table. 1.6 billion, that's with a B, 1.68 billion with a B, to resettle illegal aliens who cross our border illegally. So there's been a surge of illegal immigration lately. Much of it you saw last summer with the children who came across on those trains. And of course, just like the Syrian refugees, they weren't all children. Some of them were, but and there were a handful of mothers and children, but the vast majority were young men. They were young men with nothing to do, without a career, without a trade, without papers, who were going to come into our country and, of course, commit crimes. And that has already happened with your ordinary garden variety illegal aliens, because many of them, among them, were Mexican mafia operators. They were cartel mules. They were people who were getting over here for nefarious purposes. Now, you can't see that on their faces. They don't have it stamped anywhere. But just like the jihadists who are sneaking in among the Syrian refugees, and I don't see the Republicans stopping this. They didn't defund anything. So it's almost as if Obama owns the Republicans. Obama, the dude can be heading out golfing, which he's going to be doing. I know that you might have read in the paper that he's stopping off in California because he cares. I hate to tell you, it's just for show. And everybody knows it. I'm glad for the families. I'm glad for whatever private moments they'll have. I'm glad that he decided to tell the press they're not welcome to join him in that, because those families need to hear from their president. But it's way too late. And it's disrespectful that he's doing it as a refueling stop on the way to Hawaii, on the way to a golf junket. As if he needs to golf anymore. Why doesn't he actually show himself sitting down at a desk, working out the hard details of how to protect this country, of how to keep the jihadists out, how to keep illegal aliens out of this country? Because even the ones that are nice, that just want to come here and just want a better life, and they just want to, work a job that they claim Americans aren't willing to work anymore, and they're willing to work for slave wages, that hurts Americans. And see, that's a big part of the reason why Trump has trumped every other candidate in this race and continues to do so, because he ain't one of them. He is not part of this Paul Ryan cartel that just robbed you blind. I mean, the next time they come to raise taxes, and you know they will because their spending is now out of control. They're on a $500 billion spending binge. They've increased the deficit by hundreds of billions of dollars. And the so-called conservatives, there's like 40 conservatives in a Freedom Caucus there. They just passed. They just said, it's a disaster, but golly gee. You know what? When I was in the California State Assembly, if something like this came through, first of all, it never came through with the fingerprints of Republicans on it because the Democrats own and control everything. But occasionally there would be a bill pushed forward by a Republican. If it was the wrong bill, if it was something that raised taxes, if it was something that took away our freedoms, even if it was in the name of for the children or good government or whatever their argument was to make it sound reasonable. And of course, 99.9% of the members would just go along and they'd be a quiet no. They'd vote no later, or they'd go out to the lounge and not register their vote at all and just be not present. I'd stand up and give a speech. We used to have guys like that in the Congress. Where are they? What happened to them? I mean, in the Senate, you had Rand Paul and Senator Ted Cruz. In the House, it was Louis Gohmert and others. Where's Mark Meadows? He says, in terms of the process, I can tell you I've had more meaningful conversations with the speaker and leadership in the past couple of weeks than I've had in the last couple of years. He's the one who instigated the revolt against Speaker John Boehner. He said, I wouldn't give it an A- or an A+, in terms of trying to reach out to the rank and file. See, what they've done is they've come over and they've bought him off. They've made him feel really important. And that works. It works in Sacramento. It works in Washington, D.C. And that I'm sure he'll get treated with more respect and be invited to more things, because all he's got to do is be a quiet, either no vote or a quiet no. We don't want you to make a big ruckus. And in the end, this thing is a disaster. David Bratt, who you might remember, knocked out, sitting, I believe he was the majority whip before Kevin McCarthy, major, like the number 3 guy in charge or number 2 guy in charge of the House, was taken out by an unknown guy. Remember the David and Goliath stories? And here's what he had to say. The end product here is just cleaning the barn. It's a disaster. We're breaking our pledge on the budget caps to the American people. We've lost all fiscal discipline, and we're throwing it all on the next generation. I mean, I thought the establishment were all about being fiscal conservatives. Remember? They didn't want to talk about social issues. They didn't want to talk about illegal immigration or guns or abortion or anything like that. But taxes used to be their one holy grail that they could all rally around. Well, I guess they've abandoned that, and they've just become the party of smaller, big government, of Democrat light. I don't know what you call a leftist who's on the right side of the aisle. I don't know. I don't have words. I would love to get your take on this. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We got AWR Hawkins coming up later on in the show. We're going to talk about the never-ending, non-stop assault on the Second Amendment, including the curious way the media always gets it wrong in a certain direction before the facts are out. 323-746-TALK is our number. We'll be right back after this. America is about to go over the fiscal cliff. I mean, whatever happened to Republicans? Remember, they were the party of smaller government. They were the party of lower taxes and, help your neighbor. volunteer. Let's do it ourselves instead of have government do everything for us. I'm just curious what happened to that party. If I don't think it exists anymore. It is extinct. It has been taken over by liberals and leftists, and the party faithful are just beginning to figure that out. And in large part, thanks to Donald Trump. Hey, I've got, is it Paul in Barstow?
Yes, Tim, how are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. How are you?
Good. Hey, so this recent thing with Ryan, does anybody who has more than a 12 IQ wonder why most of America is really pissed off?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, ordinary people, everybody I talk to is mad as hell. They hate politics. They hate politicians. They hate both parties. They think everyone involved in politics is a liar and a thief and a crook and a member of the Washington or Sacramento cartel. And they're pretty much right. And there's a handful of decent people out there, but sometimes even the decent people get tired of fighting and being sort of like John the Baptist in the wilderness, crying, out the truth and being treated like, an outcast.
Yeah, and I understand that. And so this is why so many people are on the Trump bandwagon right now, and the Cruz bandwagon to a certain extent. I mean, he's kind of an outsider, and after the debate the other night, did you see that some, I don't know what they were, I'll call them moderators, gathered 2 or 3 dozen people in different groups and asked them questions?
Focus groups.
Okay. So I heard this one guy, I had to listen to it on the radio, and he was asking somebody who they switched to, and they said, well, Ted Cruz, and the guy says, well, Ted Cruz has never run anything or had to make a decision. And I thought, my God, he ran the Solicitor General's office in Texas, where he was in charge of 7,000 attorneys and paralegals. He sued the federal government on behalf of Texas as either 9 or 12 times. He argued in front of the Supreme Court 3 times over those lawsuits. So how does that translate to never run anything or made a decision?
Well, let me tell you, they hate Donald Trump, but they think they can take him out. Ted Cruz, they find even more dangerous. And the reason, Paul, is exactly what you just cited. Number one, Ted Cruz is an extremely accomplished man. He's not just articulate, he is accomplished. And he is he has pulled together a very impressive campaign across this country. He has raised a tremendous amount of money. But not only that, he has some of the most loyal grassroots followers I've ever seen. And Ted Cruz is not somebody to be underestimated. But see, they're going to try to chip away at the veneer of respectability for him, because once you do that, then it's easier to denigrate and ridicule the person that you really don't want to wind up as the nominee.
Yeah, well, and especially for those people who don't do one iota of their own research. And, I don't know.
And unfortunately, there's too many of them.
Yeah. You still there?
Yeah, I said, unfortunately, there's way too many of them.
Yeah, and we got a guy in the White House now who never made a decision or ran anything. So, you can't have it both ways.
Well, now, Ted Cruz and Barack Obama were in the Senate. You have to make decisions. You have to vote. You have to articulate some sort of principles on which you're going to govern and
right.
be the elected voice of the people of your state. I wouldn't say they've never had to make any hard decisions. He's probably had to make a lot of hard decisions. One of the hardest things to do in politics is to not only vote correctly, but then stand up and articulate the principles and fight for the people you believe in, or that you stand for, and the principles you believe in. Excuse me, in the face of overwhelming opposition, and Ted Cruz has done that.
Yeah, and you know better than I do because you've been there, that a lot of things that make sense to the everyday person that you should have voted for, you didn't vote for because of the ridiculous riders attached to them. Like up the taxes for whatever might be a rider, but having more gun stores is what you should have voted for. Well, okay, so you're going to have more gun stores, but the tax rider was there's now 50% increase.
Right, you're talking about putting a poison pill in a bill, attaching to it as a rider, as an amendment. Absolutely.
Right.
And look, it is not that hard to articulate that. People are smart enough; they get it. But if all you hear is mainstream, left-stream media, you're going to get a very different picture. It was funny because I was a member of the press, right, for this debate, which I was shocked they let me in, first of all. But second of all, they sent me all these great emails. They were like literally within minutes of it happening, they had downloaded and edited a little clip and given you a link to it in an email with a title. Now, here's the funny thing, though. They didn't send us any of the really epic, great moments of that debate except for the fight between Bush and Trump. They didn't send us the Ben Carson moment where Hugh Hewitt was booed. They didn't send us the battle between Rubio and Cruz on immigration, on amnesty. That was left out. It was unbelievable, the editing and the censoring that went on, because it was run by CNN, and CNN has an agenda to push, and that agenda is to push things that will not advance the ball for any of the people that they really truly believe can take Hillary out. And I know, and I believe that they know, that the two greatest threats to Hillary are Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. It ain't Bush. If Bush ran, the Republican Party would be finished and over, as it may already be with this latest vote by Congress and by the majority party being Republican, and this new speaker, Paul Ryan, basically selling out the American people. But Bush as nominee would finish it.
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you. But if it came down to Bush was the nominee, I'm telling you, I'd vote for him because he ain't a Marxist or a socialist. So,
well, you would be quite welcome to do so. I think a whole lot of conservatives would just skip the election, and unfortunately, that's just the reality. Anyway, I got to go. I got a break coming up. Paul, thanks for the call, and we will be right back. 323-746-TALK. That's 323-746-8255 if you're driving. We will continue with your calls. And AWR Hawkins talking Second Amendment coming up a little later on. Stay tuned. Yeah, isn't that the truth? The house of the rising sun, or the setting sun here in California, but the sun is setting on America as we know it. The America that once had two parties is over. We now have one monolithic party. You can count on the Republicans for the exact same prescription to all of our problems as the Democrats. Higher taxes, higher spending, uncontrolled deficit spending, hundreds of billions of dollars added to it, with this 1 trillion omnibus, massive, monolithic betrayal. It's what it is. And look, I'm going to switch topics here for a minute because I am curious. I'm going to play you a clip of Obama. He's trying to make himself relevant. The guy is so busy trying to act tough on Islamic jihadism without actually saying it. He's like a kid who dresses up like a cowboy and wants to be seen as a tough guy, but he's really not. He's terrified of his own shadow. And he runs to mommy every time something happens. And that's what Obama does. His mommy is the Muslim Brotherhood. He never wants to offend them. But he's got to look tough in front of the American people, even the Democrats. So I'm just curious about something. And when he's making this refueling stop here in California, I'm wondering what you think of that. I'm just curious. Do you think it was just a throwaway? He's just doing it because of the pressure? Did we create enough pressure, we the people? Or do you think he's really sincerely coming here for any decent... I really want to know what you think, because I know what I think. I've already told you. Anyway, 323-746-TALK. We'll take your calls on that. I'm going to pick up a call here. Give me your first name and city, please.
Gary Hesperia.
Hey, Gary, how are you?
I'm excellent. In response to your question there, I think he's just doing what he feels he has to do, not what he wants to do. Personally, from 2008, I haven't had any trust in Obama in any way, shape, or form. And just some of the things that concern me, I see this new election here coming up is going to be very interesting because of what is offered up. Kind of same as what we have Obama on one side, but then I look at Trump, and I know he's got the knowledge and the ability from the business side, but he's used to being a boss, and that's not how a three-party or part government works. And I could see them stonewalling him. Then you've got Carson that. Go ahead.
No, I want to let you finish. My apologies.
Okay, and then we've got Carson, that very intelligent man, very accomplished in many ways. And then in a segment I heard of this last debate, kind of struck me nice in the respects of, because being retired military, I'd like somebody that knows what we do, putting our lives on the line, making life and death type decisions, not just a dollar here, dollar there, whatever it is. And Carson, by being the surgeon that he was, yes, he had to make life and death decisions. He knows what that is. He knows what his actions could cause. So I just foresee this next year going to be very interesting, and I just wish the media would stop the political correctness and BS and actually put on a real debate so we can really see what these candidates are about.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if the media actually set the background of what we're facing as a country like they would have during World War II?
Oh, definitely.
Actually identify the enemy, explain who the enemy is, stop demonizing people for speaking the truth about the enemy. And what would happen is you would have Republicans win in a massive landslide. And of course, it would be someone like Cruz or Trump. You're possibly Carson, but he's been falling back. But you know what? He is just a good and a decent man, and they're few and far between in politics. I think whoever becomes president, if they're Republican or Democrat, they'd be a fool not to tap Dr. Ben Carson for something, Surgeon General or some other cabinet position. But to your point on Trump, yes, he's used to being an executive, but executives understand when they have to delegate. And so what they do, and Reagan did this, they get good chiefs. They get good people around them. They build a team and a plan, and then they get the right people to execute it. And you can do a lot. You can do a lot of good with that kind of approach. I think he'd be a fantastic president. And I can more easily see it with him than anyone else. But Cruz has also, run a Solicitor General's office, 7,000 attorneys he's in charge of. If he can handle 7,000 attorneys, he can handle anything.
Yeah, but I kind of look forward to it. I go back and forth with several of my friends that are we're either aligned or diametrically opposed, just because I enjoy the discussion, and maybe either one of us or both of us will learn something new, and we can progress rather than regress and digress as we have been over, I'm going to say, the last 30 to 40 years, because we've got career politicians in there, and I think that's a large part of what's brought things down. Those people have got to go, the career politicians.
Yep. Couldn't agree more, Gary. Thanks for the call. We're going to grab another call here from, I can't see where it's from. Hey, give me your first name and city, please.
Wayne from Victorville.
Wayne? Oh, is this the infamous Wayne?
Yeah, this is the one who was watching Ohio State beat the hell out of Michigan. But that's not why I called.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this call.
Hey,
I'm glad that's not why you're calling. But I noticed how you just dropped that, like kind of like name dropping a little bit, you know?
Hey, isn't it nice that Obama, on his way to the golf course, decides to want to stop over here? Isn't that nice of him?
You know, I wish he would go to Ohio and help coach their football team instead of pretend to be president.
You know, the thing that really upsets me is we had a tragedy just a few miles from where we live, okay? If it really bothered him, he would have made a direct trip out here, not wait for it's time for him to go grab a beer in Hawaii and think that he's doing something. That's what really makes me mad.
And Wayne, he would have done it the day after. He would have been here the day after,
exactly.
Just like he was in Charleston.
That's right.
And look, I'm glad he went to Charleston. I'm glad he spoke at that memorial. That was fitting. But he belongs here, and he belonged here a week ago, not tomorrow. And it's really unfortunate. It's disrespectful, not only to the country, it's disrespectful to every one of the families of the victims and those who were wounded in this horrific terrorist incident that never should have taken place but for the policies of the people that Obama put in charge.
And I would like to hear more about that from, like, Cruz or somebody, or Trump. I want him to point out the fact that, in my opinion, you know what, 14 people didn't need to die if the federal damn government would have did their damn job. Obama, personally, in my opinion, told these people, we're not going to mess with the Muslims. We're not going to say anything about that. Whatever happens, cover it up. And that's what I think he did. He don't give a damn about Christians. That is so evident. It's just ridiculous. I'm so upset. This is just ridiculous.
Well, Wayne, you are departing from your normal articulate self, and I hear the anger in your voice, but it's righteous anger, my friend. And you know what?
Be articulate next time.
I will never say this to any other Ohio State alumni or fan, but I'm going to say it to you. I feel your pain. Hey, Wayne, you know what? Even though you're from Ohio, I love you, man. You're awesome, and thank you again for your service to this great country. Thanks for the call. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with the unenthusiastic president who's pretending to be commander-in-chief. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. We're going to go straight to the phones, getting your reaction to Obama's visit tomorrow. Give me your first name and city, please. You are live on air.
Yeah, it's Tom from Phelan.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Pretty good. I was just thinking you ought to take Obama down to Louisiana and take him water skiing in those swamps back there. Maybe an alligator will get him.
Well, there you go. Well, I guess that's how you feel about it.
I tell you what, Trump, I'd go independent and hell with those Republicans. I told you they were no good.
Well, he very well may do that. I know he said he won't, but I don't think he really truly understands what's coming for him. And when the Republican Party does it, it will be the end of the Republican Party.
That's about right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say how bad it is, but I don't know what we can do.
You said it well. Tom, thanks for the call. We're going to grab another one, looking to get your reaction to the president's visit. Give me your first name and city, please.
David of Palmdale.
Hey, David, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. How you doing, Tim?
Doing great.
Great. I got an idea. I believe that we're going to win the White House. I don't see how we're going to lose it. I mean, if we're going to be up against Hillary, we're going to win it. But when we do get it, us Republicans, we got to really put our nose to the grind and get rid of these Republicans that call themselves Republicans, but they end up stabbing us in the back. So we got to get together with maybe the Tea Party, find out who the real conservatives are, and start weeding out.
I got a thought on that. David.
Okay.
So there has to be a lot of Democrats that work for a living that are ticked off that the government, forget about whether it was Republicans or Democrats, but the government just raised our taxes, or it will ultimately to pay for all this spending. It just may not be right now; it'll be in the future. And they're given 1.8 or 1.68 billion dollars to illegal aliens. I'm sorry. What about our veterans? What about people that are in need right now that aren't making it as Americans? Shouldn't they be a priority if we're going to be spending that money?
Oh, sure.
And I don't think that's a partisan issue.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I also believe that there's a lot of conservative Americans, true Americans that love this country, that see our government given away to people that have broken the law. And they tried to raise their voice, and they passed, what was it, 187, Prop 187 or something? And it got shot down by the Supreme Court. Yeah, it got shot down by the Supreme Court. So they finally, after yelling and getting upset so many times, they threw up their hands and say, why not? What am I? I might as well get with it too and take the freebies that I can get too. So I believe there are a lot of Americans that don't really want to do that, but they're like, I'm a fool if I don't.
Actually, you know what I mean? David, Prop 187 was not shot down by the Supreme Court.
Oh, I thought
it never made it.
I thought it was ruled.
Well, that was how they made it appear, but it never made it to the Supreme Court because Gray Davis would never give it its day. He was the attorney general at the time, or the governor, I'm sorry, whichever. But they never gave it a day in court. They just killed it administratively behind the scenes because it was constitutional. And, it was a game, and the people lost, as they always do in that regard. Anyway, David, thanks for the call. I think you got some good ideas. I think we need a great awakening. And it ain't going to be the Republican Party anymore. We need a victory for Americans. We need a victory for the people. We need a victory for ordinary Americans that work hard, they play by the rules, they pay their taxes, they pay their due, they care about their neighbors, and they're not involved in politics. But they're watching what's going on with horror. They're getting madder and madder and angrier. And I'm going to save the boring Obama clip for a little bit later on in the show because I don't want to shortchange his lack of enthusiasm. And look, not only are they wasting our money. Not only are they giving away our money to illegal aliens, not only are they going to come back and raise your taxes, mark my words, they will be coming in the near future to raise taxes to pay for all this insane spending that they're doing to cobble together all these different coalitions and groups and keep them all in check so that they don't appear to be too mean. They don't want to come off as the Grinch just before. They don't want to be criticized. The Republicans, above all, remember when they made Newt Gingrich like Newt Gingrich? Yeah, he didn't care. He had some courage. He was the last speaker that ever had any courage. And I got to tell you, watching what these politicians are doing, watching what these Republicans are doing, why would you want to be a Republican? You know? And when it comes to defending our Second Amendment, which is the key to our freedom, they'll drop the ball. They don't want to get their hands dirty. They don't want to get their hands bloody. They don't want to actually get down in the trenches and fight for what they consider to be a social issue. Hey, it ain't a social issue. It is a natural, fundamental right to defend your life and defend your freedom from tyranny. And you know what? We're going to have Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins when we return from this break. We're going to be talking about how we fight back. Stay tuned. Well, I'm tempted to say it's been going on forever, certainly far too long. It is. But then again, probably since the beginning of time, you have those who have power and they abuse that power. And those who don't necessarily have power but have great wealth, well, they influence those who have power. And then they have power by that connection. And for them to use it to not only steal the resources from hard-working Americans, from those who go to work every day. As Senator Rick Santorum said yesterday, I think he had a figure, some 70% or 80% or 90% of people who go off to work every day, they don't own a business. They just work for it. So there's a limit on how much their income is going to go up, but there seems to be no limit on how much government is willing to steal of their hard-earned earnings. And I think a lot of people draw a line. It's one thing if it's my money. It's a whole nother thing if it's my freedom. If it's my security. And that's why we're going to be talking about the Second Amendment with Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins. And before he calls in, I'm going to go ahead. I think we'll play you that clip I've been teasing you about with the president and his boring, non-committal committal to doing anything about terrorism. And this is his, I think it's strike 3 for Obama. Isn't it 3 strikes and you're out? Here we go.
As President and Commander-in-Chief, my highest priority is the security of the American people. And on a regular basis, I convene members of my national security team for an in-depth review of our efforts to prevent terrorist attacks against our citizens around the world and here at home. We examine any known and emerging threats. We review our security posture, and we make sure that we're taking every necessary measure to protect our people. Today, I wanted to hold our meeting here rather than in the Situation Room at the White House. I wanted to hold it at the National Counterterrorism Center because this is the hub of where so many of our experts and efforts come together. And I want to thank our Director of National Intelligence, Clapper, Jim Clapper, as well as NCTC Director Nick Rasmussen, and everybody at NCTC, all of you, for welcoming us here today. Now, Nick, along with CIA Director Brennan and FBI Director Comey, provided a threat briefing. And Director Comey and Attorney General Lynch updated us on the investigation into the San Bernardino attacks. I reiterated that the investigation will continue to have this full support of the federal government and that we should leave no stone unturned in determining why and how these terrorists carried out that tragedy. Secretary of Homeland Security Johnson updated us on the measures we're taking here at home to increase awareness, stay vigilant, and enhance the safety of the traveling public, especially with so many Americans traveling during the holidays. Now, after the terrorist attacks in Paris and San Bernardino, I know that a lot of Americans were anxious, and that's understandable. It's natural. What matters most to all of us are our friends and our families and our communities and their safety. That's true of folks inside of government as well as outside of government. But here's what I want every American to know. Since 9/11, we've taken extraordinary steps to strengthen our homeland security. Our borders, our ports, our airports, our aviation security, including enhanced watch lists and screening. And we've gotten much better, thanks in part to the people in this room, of preventing large, complex attacks like 9/11. Moreover, and I think everybody here will agree, we have the very best intelligence, counterterrorism, homeland security, and law enforcement professionals in the world. Our folks are the best. Across our government, these dedicated professionals, including here at NCTC, are relentless.
I got to stop you for a minute there,
24
Obama.
hours a day.
When you hear him say that, do you really believe that? Do you believe that he believes that? Because when he was introducing Clapper, he couldn't remember his first name because he's probably never met him before. And it's probably his first visit there because he didn't want anything to do with counterterrorism because he kind of liked the terrorists. I mean, they were his buddies. They're you know, hey, we're going to fundamentally transform America. We're going to take America down. And maybe Obama was one of those in New Jersey, you know, cheering from the sidelines and saying, yeah, you know, it's about time they got theirs. I mean, that's been his whole life's work, is tearing down this country. And, you know, you never know what is in the mind of an individual. You just never know. Go ahead and let him talk a little more.
Operations Center here, people from across our government work literally shoulder to shoulder, poring over the latest information, analyzing it, integrating it, connecting the dots. They're sharing information, pushing it out across the federal government, and just as importantly to our state and local partners. In other words, what you see here today is one strong, united team. So our professionals have a remarkable record of success. Of course, when terrorists pull off a despicable act like what happened in San Bernardino, it tears at our hearts. But it also stiffens our resolve to learn whatever lessons we can and to make any improvements that are needed. In the meantime, what the world doesn't always see are the successes. Those terrorist plots that have been prevented. And that's how it should be. This work oftentimes demands secrecy. But as Americans, we should not forget how good these patriots are. Over the years, they have taken countless terrorists off the battlefield. They have disrupted plots. They've thwarted attacks. They have saved American lives. And so for everybody who is involved in our counterterrorism efforts, I want to say thank you. And the American people, thank you. Now, I want to repeat what my team just told me. At this moment, our intelligence and counterterrorism professionals do not have any specific and credible information about an attack on the homeland. That said, we have to be vigilant. As I indicated in my address to the nation last week, we are in a new phase of terrorism, including lone actors and small groups of terrorists, like those in San Bernardino. Because they are smaller, often self-initiating, self-motivating, they're harder to detect. and that makes it harder to prevent.
Yeah,
But
so
just
instead
as
of
the threat
actually
evolves,
preventing them,
so do we.
what we're going to do is we're going to take away your guns so that you can't protect yourselves when they actually attack. Oh, and by the way, have you noticed a complete lack of the word Islamic? He never said small Islamic groups of jihadists. Why doesn't he just call them jihadists? Why can't he do that? Why can't he call them Islamic jihadists? I don't know. We're going to take a quick break, see if we can get a hold of Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins, and we'll be right back. You know who was good at moments like this? I know in the past we've played you George W. Bush at 9/11. And that has a certain style and a certain feel to it. And it was a moment in time that most of us will not ever forget. And he was president of all the people in that moment. 15 minutes later, of course, New York Times trying to rip him apart and tear apart the country and divide everybody. But for those moments, we were one. But I can't do George W. Bush. But there was another president who is actually, probably doesn't get enough credit, but he actually did know how to feel the pain of other people. It's a big part of how he advanced himself and how he became president of the United States. And that, of course, is our good friend, Mr. Bill Clinton. And let me tell you, if Bill Clinton were president, first of all, nobody would need to tell him, hey, by the way, cancel golf, go to San Bernardino. It wouldn't have been necessary. He would have gone there, and he would have probably given a speech or a talk. He was smart. He would have put on a like a jacket, kind of how you once in a while you see governors and presidents wear these black jackets, they have an emblem on them. And maybe a baseball cap, maybe not. Clinton had pretty good hair, so he didn't need to. And but they're hanging out there with the law enforcement. They're there to encourage the troops. They're there to obviously have already visited the family. See, he would have already visited the family without telling anyone. And then he would have talked about it. He would have bit his lower lip. And he would have said something like, we're here. It's a difficult moment for our country. And, I'm surrounded by some of the finest law enforcement in the world. And it was really tough, but I did go and talk to some of the family members earlier. And our hearts and prayers are with them. And you know what? That's all he needed to do. That's all Obama needed to do. And now he's out giving speeches trying to be the tough. We don't need you to be the tough guy. We know that you do not oppose Islamic terrorism. You don't have a problem with it. You'd rather play some little war game over in Syria and bomb a bunch of stuff and pretend you're doing something when they're here. I hate to tell you that, but they're here. They live among us, and they're much harder to identify. That means you've got to work harder. That means you've got to stop spying on ordinary Americans in order to keep them in line, and you've got to start actually channeling your resources to monitor the social media of those who are part of Islamic jihadist groups, those who swear allegiance to ISIS. They're not hard to find. They're on Facebook. You have lots of people working in the NSA and in the FBI and in all these other agencies. And look, you have a lot of them doing things they don't need to be doing. So take them off those jobs and put them on the trail of these sleeper jihadists before the next one rears its ugly head. And then, if you really wanted to be president, you should uphold the Second Amendment. You should encourage people to go out and exercise their fundamental natural right. You should encourage them to go to a gun range and get training. You should encourage them to get their CCWs. I won't, but you should. You should encourage the defense of the nation. When you use the word homeland, I don't believe you. When you say that you're with and this is your team and they're in the fight and you know they're waging war against on the battlefield, you mentioned. There is no battlefield. Not anymore. The battlefield in San Bernardino was a Christmas party. And nothing that you have said, Obama, even comes close to acknowledging the gravity of that, the significance of that fact, of the fact that we weren't just attacked on the homeland, we were attacked in a place where everyone had every reason to feel safe at work, minding their own business. They were at a pleasant gathering, celebrating Christmas, probably exchanging Secret Santa presents and things of that nature. And you talk about it in such antiseptic terms as if you don't actually want... I can just picture Obama putting, you know, those rubber gloves that look like a condom over his fingers and saying, "Yeah, I feel your pain over there." He doesn't actually want to get involved. He doesn't want to feel it. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't actually care. That's the bottom line from what I hear in his tone and what I've heard in his tone from the very beginning. But he's been such an epic failure at pretending to care that he's like somebody who auditioned and then, you know, the audition didn't go well and they persuade the director for another chance, and so he did the second one at the Pentagon, and now this was the third audition he begged for. He had to beg and plead for another chance, and he did it from this National Counterterrorism Task Force headquarters, which it didn't just roll off his tongue because he doesn't want counter anything to the terrorists. He really doesn't even want to identify them, but man, does he want to pretend. And whether we like it or not, he's coming here tomorrow. I am curious what you think of that. 323-746-TALK. That's our number, 323-746-8255. We seem to have lost the good doctor. We'll get him back at some point here before the show is out, but we'll take your calls when we come back because I still want to know. I want to know what you think because he's coming to our backyard. And do you think it's heartfelt? Do you think it's him just doing what he feels like he needs to do and what he's been pressured to do by his political handlers and probably a lot of people in the Democrat Party? I can't imagine how the Democrat Party's feeling right now vis-a-vis Obama, because he is one of their next to Hillary. Obama has to be one of the most unpopular figures in all of American politics because, look, you can say all the nice stuff you want. You can blame Bush all you want. But when all of the mass shootings take place on your watch, when all of the terrorist attacks take place on your watch, when you pull everybody out, create a vacuum, and empower ISIS, and they come here and start killing Americans, or they send a sleeper cell, or they threaten us, and they're laughing at the incompetence. They're laughing at Obama, who puts Jay Johnson in charge of Department of Homeland Security because he knows he doesn't want to secure the homeland. And he makes it clear. He put a policy in place. We're not going to be looking at people's social media. Hey, that's their business. You know what? If you want to come to this country, it's our business. Because we want to know what's in your heart, especially if you're coming from a country where there are a lot of jihadists. Note, I didn't say Muslims. I said jihadists. And almost every one of these countries from the Middle East has been spawning jihadists, some more than others. Some actually have taken it in hand and tried to be allies to the United States. But hey, the proof is in the results. We gotta go. We got a break, but If you're on hold, stay on hold or call back, because we will be right back with your calls. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the great state of California. And we are thrilled to have Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins back on the show. He is a military historian and a PhD in that, as well as I don't know if he officially has a PhD in firearms, but the man knows more about guns than almost anyone I know. Welcome back to the show, Dr. A.W.R.
Hey, well, thank you, Tim. Great to be with you.
Hey, in California, we are under assault as never before, and now we've got Obama coming here tomorrow for a refueling stop, which he's pretending that he cares about the victims in San Bernardino, but he didn't bother to come until he had a golf trip planned. And, of course, he is still out there pushing his gun control. And I happen to notice you did a piece on a shooting that happened involving the LAPD. And every time something like this happens, the media always indicts the cops, they indict conservatives, they indict anyone who has a gun in their hand, unless they're in a movie and they're a liberal. And in this case, they made it sound like the cops shot a guy laying on the ground who was just minding his own business.
Right. Well, and maybe it sounded like he was if you just listen to people, but if you look to the photos or to the videos, and I know we put a still shot from a video up at Breitbart. If you look at the video, he's on the ground with a gun in his hand, which he refused to release, even though the police asked numerous times for him to drop the weapon. The video, or the still photo from the video, shows him on the ground after being shot, still clinging to a handgun.
Yeah, you can see it in the picture at your story up at Breitbart.com. And I mean, he looks like he's ready to shoot it again. He's got his fingers on the trigger.
Right.
So he forced their hand, essentially.
Yeah, right. So the description was, of course, that it was an overuse of force, all the things that you've said. But if you look at the picture, after they shot numerous times, they shot enough that he went from a standing position to a lying position. After they did that, he still has a gun in his hand. So you have to wonder what he looked like when the whole episode began. And, as you indicate, and as I said, when this began, it was as if the media pretends it was as if that it were the police against an unarmed man. But obviously it wasn't.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Clearly it wasn't. And essentially, if the media was going to be accurate in the story, they could have said something like, the police were forced to end a man's life because he chose suicide by police officer, by not releasing and dropping the weapon. He had multiple chances to drop the weapon, and he refused.
Right. I read, if you read all the reports, before they came to that point, he went into a pizzeria, and the customers in the pizzeria talked about seeing him walk in there with a gun. And they said, well, he was angry, but he didn't rob anybody. And he was, but the fact remains, he walked into that pizzeria with a gun in his hand, and there's never been a question really whether he was armed or not, and the media overlooked that, and the photos betrayed him. The photos betrayed. I don't want to say it was suicide by cop. I don't want to make a judgment because I don't know his motives, but the photos and the video betray the fact that the man was clearly armed and that the police really had no choice but to do what they did, to handle it the way they did, because he would not drop the weapon when they ordered him repeatedly to do so.
Well, here's a question that has been nagging me for a while now, and I want to get your take on this. We've discussed many times the media's complicity with gun controllers in covering up the facts. I mean, that whole Everytown website is just a gun control front group that that everybody they always quote it in the media, but it's funded by Bloomberg and all these other gun grabbers. It's not some objective news source. But do you see a change since San Bernardino, since some of the other things like Paris, where more of the American public is saying, hey, I don't trust the Democrats. I don't want my guns taken away. I don't really care what you politicians do with the rest of it, but I want to be able to defend my family against terrorists.
Right. Absolutely. No doubt. Almost the point you make with your question needs to stand on its own without any comment. And the question is almost rhetorical. It is so on point. I'm writing a piece today or tonight on the Huffington Post. Huffington Post is complaining because so many people are buying guns post San Bernardino. They're complaining. They're like, how can you be this way? How can you be going out to buy a gun? And they're trying to find someone to blame, and they're blaming the Huffington Post is blaming the NRA. It's the NRA's fault. NRA is encouraging these people to do this. They don't understand.
Wait a minute.
No, the NRA is not encouraging this. Common sense is encouraging this.
Right. But this is a good thing for people to be arming themselves. The bad thing, which they've also blamed the NRA for, they're blaming the NRA for the deaths in San Bernardino, but when those deaths belong on the blood is on the hands of Obama, the blood is on the hands of Jay Johnson, DHS Secretary, Department of Homeland Security, who put in place a policy, hey, by the way, we're not even going to check people's social media. We're not going to really find out who they are. We're just going to let them in. We're going to let them in easier than we do people from almost any country because we're going to be so politically correct that the rest of the world, Muslims are going to love us. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be the post-Islamic terrorism presidency, and it's been an epic failure. It has backfired in his face, and innocent Americans, are dead because of Obama's pick for Department of Homeland Security, who put in place a politically correct policy. It ain't the NRA. It's the DHS.
Right.
And it's Obama.
No, I'm with you. The American people know that. And I'll tell you, this is my opinion, but what's going to end up happening in the long run, San Bernardino helps Ted Cruz. San Bernardino helps Donald Trump. It helps anybody who is strong on national security, strong on doing what we need to do to protect ourselves from a Muslim influx. People who are strong on that issue are helped. And I know it's an unintentional, indirect help, but what's happened with the DHS policy is this policy of looking the other way to be politically correct, to keep from hurting Muslims' feelings. This policy, thanks to San Bernardino, will actually help the GOP. No way am I glad there was an attack in order to help them. No way. But the result is there was an attack, and it does help them. The Democrats have no idea their weakness actually plays into the hand of the GOP because the GOP wants to be strong on national security, and that's what we see. So it helps the GOP as a party, but it also encourages the American people as a people. Go get your guns because ultimately your defense rests in your own hands, and people realize that.
Well, and Dr. AWR, the bottom line is that Obama was on television while we were still on the lookout for the killers. He was talking about taking away our right to defend ourselves from the killers. And that is not lost on the people in my community and in this area that was affected. And I think every American was able to put themselves in the shoes of the victims for once, because it wasn't,
but not just,
it wasn't
Obama.
The World Trade, also it wasn't the World Trade Center, where most of us will never work in a building that tall. We work in ordinary little places, and I just think I don't think they get away with their normal politicizing and seizing the or taking advantage of a tragedy in order to force their agenda.
Right. And it was Obama, but it wasn't just Obama. It was also Hillary. And we have to understand that. Before the shooters had even been apprehended or identified, and of course they weren't ultimately apprehended, they were killed. But before they were killed and identified, both Obama and Hillary had already come out and called for more gun control. And Ted Cruz talked about that. I wrote on that today. He said, look, they are so quick to sacrifice the rights of law-abiding citizens. They are so given to do that even before they knew who the shooters were or what was the motive, even before that happened, they were ready to give up the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, ready to just throw it away. I think that's a lesson for voters that they need to learn and listen to. If you want your rights to be secure, Obama and Hillary cannot be a choice. They cannot be a place of refuge. They are ready to give away freedom at the first opportunity. And I think that's why the GOP has benefited. And the GOP hasn't wanted something like this to benefit from, but they are benefiting from it because people realize, look, we got to be safe. We're going to have to choose someone who will keep us safe. And Obama and Hillary are not that choice.
Well, I couldn't have said that better myself. Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins, can you stay with us for one more segment?
Oh, no problem. Look forward to it.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and be right back with more insight from the doc. Hey, welcome back. We're talking with Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins. He is the doctor of all things important, military history and firearms, and he is a columnist, one of my favorite. Always looking forward to his new pieces at Breitbart.com. If you want the story in the fewest number of words, he's your man. And look, so Dr. Hawkins, we are seeing an unprecedented assault on a fundamental freedom, on the key to freedom, which is having the right and being able to own the same tools, firearms, that can be used to deprive you of your freedom by a government. Do you think that we're going to see a sea change in terms of the Second Amendment with politicians? Are we going to see a backing off of this gun control, gun grabbing, even by some Democrats? Are we getting to the point politically where that may be a mistake for them?
Yeah, well, my honest opinion is yes, that we will, except for two exceptions. Hillary Clinton, because she has to be far enough left to keep the base away from Bernie Sanders. So Hillary Clinton will continue to be outrageous with supporting lawsuits against gun sellers, gun makers, supporting or mentioning from time to time Australian-style gun bans. So she'll continue to do that. And Obama is going to, at some point, it could be tomorrow, it could be next week, could be 3 weeks away, he's going to issue an executive order, either to expand background checks to cover gun shows or expand them to cover private gun owners who sell a certain number of guns. But there's something there he's looking for, and he's going to make that expansion as soon as he thinks he can get away with it. But apart from those two, elected officials certainly are going to stay clear of it. San Bernardino changed everything.
So here's just a crazy notion. I read that the killers in San Bernardino, the Islamic jihadists, they had somebody else buy their guns, thereby completely bypassing the background check. They had their neighbor, is it Enrique Marquez, who's just been arrested by the FBI. Okay. So what's to stop law-abiding Americans who are sick and tired of having their rights infringed? Just say, hey, look, I don't care what you say. You can tell me that I have to do a background check because I sold a certain number of guns. So I'm just going to sell them in secret. I'm not going to tell you, and I don't care. Take your laws and shove them.
No, you're exactly right. What you present is both the problem and a solution. and it's a problem in this way. What's going to happen is, at some point, the left is going to go, hey, this law is too easy to circumvent, so we need it to be tighter. And that's a problem because, as you point out, right now, it's very easy. That's the problem with background checks. They're a false hope. When people talk about them, hey, I can get around them if I want to. That's no problem. And that's a scary thing to think that they might address that. But as far as free people go, you're exactly right. Since 1791, free people have been selling guns privately to other free people, and that's never been against the law. Now, I know in the state of California, and I need to be careful, in California it is against the law, but in the rest of the country, largely speaking, I think apart from New York and a few other states, that's not against the law. And free people continue to work that way. And what the Democrats are trying to do is close that loop. They want to know where every gun is sold, what every gun owner's name is, what every gun owner's address is. That's the ultimate goal. And none of these things, none of them will prevent a San Bernardino attack. Not one of them. It's all a joke. It's all a play on words in order for the government to figure out where every gun owner lives. That's why we have to fight it tooth and nail. It has nothing to do with preventing crime. It's all about increasing the government's knowledge on where gun owners are, where they're located, where the guns are.
So, in short, what you're saying is it's a play to increase government control.
That's it. And I hate to use these words, Tim. I'm trying to dodge it. I'm careful with my speech because I don't want to be.
Here comes the word assault weapon.
But yeah, they want to know where the assault weapons are. But not only that, Tim, they want to know where things are for confiscation time. I hate to say that, but that's the bottom line. See, the goal of the left pushes a 40% gun sale lie. You'll hear Bloomberg say it. You'll hear Obama say it. You'll hear Hillary say it. You'll hear Martin O'Malley say it. They push a lie. They say 40% of all guns sold are sold apart from a background check. Their implication is that those guns are all new guns and that people are able to get around a background check for new gun sales 40% of the time. Of course, that's a 100% lie.
That's a lie.
And
that's a big fat lie.
They push that lie in order to expand background checks. Their goal is this. Background checks didn't come into existence until 1998. The left knows between 1791 and 1998, quite a few guns were sold. They want to know where those guns are. And their goal is to expand background checks so they can find those guns. That gives them a trustable list so that when confiscation time comes, they know where they all are. That's why we
Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins.
Don't need to feel dirty.
Absolutely not. You are a great American. Thanks for coming on. Welcome back. You have found your way to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. You might wish that I was the real governor, especially since the Marxist progressives like Jerry Brown, it's funny. He has one set of rules for you and a whole different set for him. We've talked about the endless corruption under his watch. One area where he has not been as horrific as he could be is on some of the worst gun bills, but still he has signed bills. He signed a bill that would make it illegal, would make it a felony to go on any K through college campus in California and conceal carry, even if you're a former retired police officer or military. Excuse me. And what he does this, think about the implications. So now if you decide you want to defend the lives of those who might be confronted by a killer and you happen to have illegally carried onto the campus, and thank God that you have a firearm in your possession so that you might be able to defend the innocent. Now you're a criminal. Now you could face charges, even though you might actually act as the hero. Only in California, only in the Marxist progressive utopia of California. But in Obama land, I agree with Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins. Obama is just looking for the right moment to come in and do the executive order. He is coming for more of your guns. He is coming to fill every perceived loophole of the left, because these perceived loopholes are nonsense. They're always ferreting about, looking for some weakness. Oh my gosh, we heard that somebody exercised their freedom in a way that we couldn't control. And that's so offensive to them. More offensive than people being murdered by Islamic jihadists. They won't talk about that. They don't want to use the words because it might offend someone. But they got no problem offending you. They view you as the unwashed masses who need to be controlled. And it's that simple. And they're the only ones smart enough to ultimately make those decisions. And you know, one of the things I've thrown the question out there a couple times. I've gotten a number of calls on it. And I am curious to get your take, because I'm kind of doing an unofficial poll. I put up a Facebook post, and I will go ahead and read it to you at the risk of being criticized. Hey, you know what? If you want to call in, you can criticize me all you want, as long as you, keep it clean. So here's the post I put up, because I saw this article in the Victor Valley Daily Press yesterday. It says Obama to meet with San Bernardino shooting victims. Well, we've been hammering on him for over a week for his complete lack, his inability to even pretend he's caring. So here's what I wrote. Somebody told Obama that he needed to stop by and pretend to care about the victims of his political correctness and the PC policies of Jay Johnson, the DHS secretary. So he's reluctantly agreed to stop off on his way to golfing in Hawaii. How much longer do we have to put up with this disrespectful fool pretending to be our president? Anyway, comments were fast and furious, and certainly it was the vast majority are just counting down the days until Obama finally exits stage left. But I am curious. What do you think? Do you think he really cares? I'm being sincere. Do you think he cares? Or do you think he's just putting on that he cares because he knows that that's what he's supposed to do? Do you think his political advisors pushed him into it? 323-746-TALK is the number if you want to call in and weigh in on that. 323-746-8255. Most people that I've talked to said that if he'd come earlier, if he'd actually shown up within a day or two of it happening and not had a whole nother agenda, then you could give him the respect and say, well, yeah, you showed up. But when you wait and then you go out and give speech after speech after speech, if he really wanted to give a speech, why didn't he give a speech from San Bernardino? He gave speeches from Charleston. Why didn't he give a speech from San Bernardino? Nobody would have faulted him. I mean, if he'd maybe toned it down on the gun control, but he could have seized that as a moment to bring the country together. But I can't escape the thought that he really doesn't care about this country or its success. And when most people give a speech, when they have to talk about really complex issues, a lot of times they like to write down their thoughts. And you can't blame them. You want to get it right. So you have a teleprompter or you have some notes and you write down the really difficult stuff. But when Obama, who is a very eloquent speech reader, reads the part about how he's supposed to care, I don't buy it. I don't buy it because he doesn't believe it, because he doesn't mean it. That's where it's like, how hard is this? You've got people who lost a loved one, and they lost a loved one not because of too many guns. They lost a loved one because you set in place an individual, you appointed him to the Department of Homeland Security. He let a jihadi bride in here, and somehow this individual who grew up here decided he wanted to kill all the people he worked with. And you've never addressed that. You've never actually talked about that. You've never said, hey, look, we put in place a policy. It's a stupid policy. It was a mistake. Here's why we did it, and we're going to change it. You know what? We might criticize you for that, Obama, but we would respect you for owning it. But see, this guy, nothing's his fault. He's just way too much of a narcissist. I hate to tell you that. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, take more of your calls, and I've got a clip that you will not want to miss. 323-746-TALK is our number, and we are talking about the greatest threat to your happiness, the greatest threat to your freedom, the greatest threat to your future, the government. And, you know, once in a while, somebody comes along and they just put something so perfectly, so succinctly, that you cannot help but play it, even though it's someone from another show, another station, and we don't have the clip ready yet, but when we do, you are gonna... Wow. Wait a minute. No way. Chief Engineer Sean McNeil is just whispering in my ear. Well, that sounds a little weird. Okay. He just said, he boomed in my ear, actually, that it's ready. So you are in for a treat. This is from The Blaze, and it's a lady who you may know. I've been on her show. I've met her. She's a very outspoken individual in defense of freedom, especially gun rights. She's written a book on it, but her name is Dana Lash. Check it out.
We the godless left. You do realize that in the wake of this terrorist attack, when people were saying our thoughts and our prayers are with those who are affected in the San Bernardino terror attack, you had the New York Daily News and you had elected officials and you had journalists mocking people who were simply asking for prayers, mocking them, saying, well, we're so glad that the GOP can save everybody from ISIS with their prayers. Here's an idea. How about you guys stop letting terrorists in? How about you guys stop supporting policies that reduce the criteria for unvetted foreigners to get visas to come into this country? Because you all have blood on your hands right now. It wasn't the NRA that made the rule that said we're not allowed to look at the social media activity of people who are unvetted and coming from hotbed areas of terrorism like Tashfeen Malik. I don't know if people missed Government 101 and how all of this works, but that was actually Jay Johnson at the Department of Homeland Security. And by the way, he upheld that rule in 2014. It wasn't Wayne LaPierre. See, Wayne LaPierre is an older white guy. Jay Johnson is a younger black man, and he works with DHS. Wayne LaPierre is at the NRA. Maybe you guys are illiterate and you don't know what all the letters stand for, but the NRA is made up of millions of people who are just like me, and we want to fellowship and protect our Second Amendment rights. We don't make policy decisions, and we sure as hell don't work at DHS. That y'all's guy, Jay Johnson, right? He was the one who was appointed to that position by President Barack Obama, who also supports this rule that was upheld in 2014. And it was that rule, ladies and gentlemen, that very rule that allowed inside these United States Pakistani fiance visa applicant Tashfeen Malik, who, by the way, was ranting on social media for years about her jihadi fetish. She was fetishizing jihadism online. But because Jay Johnson was so obsessed with political correctness and so obsessed with optics, which I'm sure is going to be of great comfort to the 14 families who lost people in San Bernardino that day, I'm sure they'll find great comfort in the fact that Jay Johnson did all he could to make sure that DHS was beyond reproach in terms of political correct optics. It was him who made that decision. It was he who upheld that decision, not the NRA. So yes, why don't you people stop supporting policies and candidates who want to lower the criteria and let every Tom, Dick, and Harry from every hotbed terrorist activity cell around the world into the United States? Because we've kind of had about enough of it. I'm really tired of hearing people attack the NRA. You know, I had a fender bender in a Taco Bell parking lot one time, and I didn't call AAA and go off on them and accuse them of being responsible somehow for this. It is sickening to me that we have an administration that promised to keep Americans safe, and they haven't kept Americans safe. We've had beheadings in Oklahoma, a terror attack in San Bernardino, a terror attack in Boston, a terror attack at the Naval Yard, a terror attack in Chattanooga, a terror attack at Fort Hood, and every single one of these people were showing signs, exhibiting something. But our blessed government, the government that says it's going to protect you, its number one job is to keep Americans safe. They didn't do it. And now they want to make sure that you're not able to protect yourself and pick up their slack. I have a problem with this. I have kids. I have a family. I also value innocent life. I value my life. And I have a major problem with this. I also have a major problem with all of these tragedy, dry humping whores. I do have a problem with them, and I'm not watching my language because it's about time that somebody call you out for what you are. You sicken me. You are the people who run away from supporting things like Project Child Safe. You are the people who run away from supporting programs like Eddie Eagle Safety. You are the people who believe that ignorance is the key, whereas millions of mothers like me, we believe that education is the antidote to ignorance. We believe that what our children don't learn inside of the home, they're going to learn outside of it. So, to make up for all of the ignorance that these people have been professing in their communities and teaching to their families, we have to make sure that we're doubly responsible.
Hey, I couldn't have said it better. You got to watch the video if you get a chance. That is one angry mama bear, and I think she is reflective of a mood. We were talking about earlier with Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins, but she's reflective of a mood of the country. People are mad as hell, and they're not going to take it anymore. You know, and this is coming at a time when there is an opportunity to do something. And oftentimes that doesn't happen. The timing doesn't work nearly as well as it is working right now because there's a presidential election. In this presidential election, these are the issues of the day, even though the media would like to pretend that these issues aren't important. They'd like to pretend that anyone who raises these issues is a racist or a redneck or something else. But in the end, Americans are Americans. And we value our rights. We value our freedom. The government should never be a threat to your natural rights. You should never have to apologize for being a free human being and for wanting to live and exercise all of your God-given rights without interference. But see, we have these educational establishments that have become indoctrination centers, and we have the media that indoctrinates us, and we have the culture, the social, the pop culture with music and videos and movies and magazines, and they all try to indoctrinate you into somehow believing that the right to keep and bear arms, that wasn't really as they intended. You know, it's something for way back then. That's Lexington and Concord type stuff, and that doesn't apply to today. I don't know about you, but I consider my rights to be timeless. I consider my rights to be absolute. So when the government becomes a threat to my rights, the government becomes a threat to me and my family. And I'm going to do something about that. And yes, no, if you're with the NSA, I'm not making a threat. I'm making a promise that I will take action. And that's the other reason why they're coming after our First Amendment, because the action that we want to take is change the government. See, the government wants to change the people and deprive us of our rights so it will be easier to control. And we're saying, no, we're going to change you so that we can be free. Your job, your obligation is to defend freedom, not increase regulation and increase control. Somebody wrote something on one of my pages one time on Facebook and said, well, isn't your job, I think I was criticizing Obama on gun control. Surprise, surprise. He said, isn't your job to pass laws and therefore when laws are passed, you should abide them? He was talking about more gun control. And I wrote back and I said, no. My job is to defend, protect, and safeguard the natural and inalienable rights of the people, to defend freedom, and to increase freedom, and to beat back government interference in our lives and infringement of our natural rights. And that, and nothing less, is what we should be seeking in a candidate 2016. We'll be right back after these messages. You have found your way to the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. And, it's going to be very interesting moving forward as we watch this presidential election play out. And the presidential election is very much a backdrop for an unfolding momentum, a movement. Let me say that. And it's not a conservative movement. It's not a liberal movement. It's an American movement. It is virulently anti-government. It is anti-establishment. And it is pro-freedom. And it really doesn't matter whether your issue is guns, forced vaccinations, or the government just stealing more and more of your money so it can engage in bribing more and more politicians and people for their votes by handing out freebies or dispensing permits to the 1%ers who can then bribe you back. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, kind of a deal. It's quid pro quo. People have had it. They're done. They're shall I say, on the verge of a revolution, a political revolution. So you don't have to freak out, but a revolution nonetheless, because people have finally gotten to the point where they can see very clearly what is happening. Just take Donald Trump for a minute. Here's a guy that stands up and speaks for the average American, something that politicians used to do all the time. And the media and the political establishment want him tried as a Nazi and hung by the neck until dead or put before a firing squad. I mean, nothing will be good enough for them until he is gone. And it is astonishing, but believable when you see that policies that at one time in this country were blasé, they were laissez-faire, they were just another day in America, are now considered radical, are considered racist. They're 5 bridges too far. And yet, I'm speaking, of course, Donald Trump when he suggested that we ban all Muslim immigration. Now, mind you, the media still has never acknowledged their hero, Jimmy Carter, who we played you a clip from Sam Donaldson that outlined what Carter had laid out, 4 steps after the Iranian hostage crisis. And we had our people taken hostage. The president acted swiftly. He said, Iranian diplomats, get your asses out of our country. You have till midnight. We're breaking off all diplomatic relations. We're going to seize all your dough here. All your money gone. Forget it. We are not going to engage in any commerce. Cutting off all supplies. You're not going to get any of the supplies you thought you were going to get. Food, medicine, forget about it. Oh, and by the way, banning all Iranian immigration. Just like that. Now, last time I checked, Jimmy Carter's a Democrat. Nobody had an issue with it. He was standing up for America. He was doing what made sense. You don't enable your enemies. But see, the Democrats under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, they believe the only appropriate way to deal with evil is to enable it. They don't believe in killing it. See, Senator Ted Cruz said something interesting. And Sean, I don't think we got that clip. I don't know if we did or not, because CNN didn't want to have that clip out there. It was when Senator Ted Cruz, he just went after it. And he just said, hey, you know what? We need to kill these terrorists. He didn't say contain them. He didn't say capture them. He didn't say put them on trial and bring them to justice, as like Jerry Brown and Hillary Clinton say. You know, give them. Yeah, no, I didn't think we did, because CNN didn't put it out. When as a member of the media for a day and a half, I was on this special list, and they sent clips. Prepackaged. It was easy. You just click on it, boom, download it, and use it. Kind of nice. It was like having a whole research department. The only problem was they censored and didn't show some of the most significant moments of the debate. But that is what Senator Ted Cruz said. He was unequivocal. Now, as noted in the very interesting conversation we had yesterday with Senator Rick Santorum, you need to make a distinction between just carpet bombing the Middle East, quote unquote, and actually engaging in a strategy that will be successful. And he delved into this whole concept of a caliphate and how to undermine it by stealing the land and showing that they're not being successful, so that maybe the caliphate blows up on them instead of actually it becoming a bigger thing. And I thought that was an interesting insight from someone who has been there on the ground, someone who has been in intelligence briefings. And we didn't get a lot of detail from either Cruz or Trump, but I'm sure that both of them would bring very capable people with that knowledge around them. But this is not a war that we can go fight in the Middle East. I hate to tell you that. And most of you know, I'm a huge, staunch, and very strong supporter of our men and women in the armed forces. Absolutely, unequivocally. And I wouldn't send them to fight a war that really needs to be fought among us. This war is going to be fought on U.S. soil. We need to pay attention to America. We need to begin to, as a matter of fact, the government could do us a favor. They could get the government out of our way when it comes to buying ammunition, when it comes to procuring firearms, because right now a record number of people are doing that. And to be truly American about it, when there are record numbers of people who are trying to buy guns and ammo, it'd be really, really nice if maybe the government could sell some surplus. They got plenty of ammo and put it on the market. And of course, just like when OPEC dumps oil on the market, the price plummets. And then ammunition would drop in price and ordinary Americans would be able to buy it. It would be a benefit. It would be a boom. It'd be like a tax credit. Yeah. And that's one thing the government could do to enable Americans to defend themselves. We don't need to send a single American to the Middle East. We need to arm the Americans on the front lines and get the government the hell out of their way. Because after all we've learned about this San Bernardino Islamic jihadists, I'm not confident that our government can ever find them, the next ones, or identify them or stop them. So the hard reality is they're going to strike again. It'll be someone different. It'll be another jihadi next door. Nobody will see it coming. So the only preparation is to be armed and to have the mentality, look, I am the front lines. Look, I may be at my kid. You could be at your kid's Christmas play. Think about this. You're at your kid's Christmas play. You're watching it. They're singing Silent Night. And then all of a sudden, some jihadist or two or three come in black and body armor and they start shooting the place up. Or a movie theater or what have you. But just picture your kid's Christmas play. Last place in the world you'd expect it, right? There's one guy. He's that guy that never talks. He's that guy that always goes to the range. He's always plinking. A little bit antisocial, not comfortable around people. Some people might call him a redneck. But when those jihadists burst in, he draws and he fires, and 3 or 4 shots later, they're dead. And he has stopped the assault. That, in my opinion, is how this war is going to be fought. We're going to be grateful for men like him, or women, who take the time to train, to learn their weapons, to be cold and calculated, and to be able to be calm and impassionate. Because by getting excited, by allowing the rush of adrenaline to skew their aim, that half a second could cost a life. That's going to be the difference, in my opinion. I don't think a single thing the government does, other than not allowing jihadists in and literally shutting down immigration from jihadi countries, that's the only thing that can prevent future jihadis from coming here, but they're already here. Anyway, 323-746-TALK if you want to get in on the final segment here on the Tim Donnelly Show. Hey, welcome back to the show. We are almost out of time, but not quite. We're going to go to North Carolina. John, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon to the left coast, sir. How are you?
Hey, you know what? We are feeling awfully cool right about now. I don't know what's happened with this global warming, but it's global cooling here. We are out of the 20s, though. I'll say that. What's it like out there on the?
You don't want to know. We're gonna be in the 65, 70 range all the way. Well, it's gonna cool down for the weekend, but by Christmas it's supposed to be 70. It's unreal. But I'll take it.
It used to be the reverse. It used to be the reverse.
Yeah, and you guys are gonna go from a drought to a lot of rain here, from what I'm hearing. Possibly.
Yeah, well, that would be a blessing. Certainly makes a lot. It makes a lot of people feel better, but we ought to just build a canal from the Columbia River to Lake Shasta and just fill it up with water and then use it, for humans instead of,
for sure, exactly,
instead of sending it all out to sea.
That's right. Hey, really cool having Rick Santorum on last night. I really enjoyed that. But the reason I called in was about Jimmy Carter, and God bless him. I'm glad he got over. I hear he got over his cancer battle, and he's doing a lot of good work with the churches in Georgia.
Yeah.
But there's three things I remember about Jimmy Carter, and this is my later high school days. It was a crappy economy. Then he brought in Billy Beer in a peanut business, and then the Iran hostage situation. But didn't he also be, other than the diplomats, didn't he round up all the kids in here on the student visas and get them all compiled and tell them they were going home too?
You know what? That's right. Did I forget that one?
I don't know. Well, I don't know if you didn't, but I remember. I don't think that was
in the initial 4 steps. I think that was something he did later on.
Okay. Well, because I was thinking, boy, if I was an Iranian, I'd be going back to Iran. You know, of course, I was in Pittsburgh, but all by the way of saying, if I was in a foreign country and something was going wrong, I'd have been shipped out, or I could have been a potential for that. But anyhow, yeah, I just remember that. It's kind of wanted to jog your memory on that. But on this gun thing that I always love to talk about, can you imagine if they really did start trying to confiscate guns? I mean, even Democrat or Republican, independent, there would be a huge, you talk about a revolt, that would be huge if they even breathed the word of even thinking about doing it.
Well, if they tried to do it, you'd have a lot of dead people, because Americans are not going to give their guns up willingly. We have a simple saying, pry 'em from my cold dead hand. I've never liked that. I don't believe. My saying is very simple. You might be able to pry my gun from my cold dead hand, but good luck with my sons and their friends and the tens of thousands of others who will rise in my place, because we're Americans, and we will not be oppressed by our government.
Exactly.
I'm sure the NSA is going to be visiting me sometimes. And I don't care.
Well, yeah. And I love that piece by the young lady there from The Blaze. No, I can't think of her name. Lash.
That's Dana Lash.
I want to say Dana Lash. Yeah, that was awesome. And
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was almost as good as my rant, but I'm a little favorable to mine. But she's probably a little easier on the eyes.
Rightfully so, for sure. All right, well, enjoy the show. Keep up the good work. I will let you get to your closing, and I got the day off tomorrow, but it's going to pour down rain, so definitely no golf.
Well, John, you enjoy it, and try to stay dry, work hard, and we'll continue to bring the truth here. Always enjoy talking to you, my friend. Hey, you have been listening to the Radio Free California Network. We're on every weekday, 3 to 6. And you're going to hear us. You can stream us at timdonnellyshow.com. You can also go to TuneIn and search for Radio Free California Network and download the app for your phone. That way you never have to miss a show, even if you're out there working. And look, this is a unique time in our country, and it is an important time. So stay tuned, stay safe, and be vigilant. God bless you, and Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show, out.